Hi everyone, today I'm talking about my top 10 Rondel board games. Now, a Rondel is one of my favourite mechanisms where you have some kind of track or circuit and you are travelling along this track, stopping off at certain points along the way, maybe taking actions, maybe collecting resources, but eventually you'll end up where you began and will go again. I think the mechanism offers a lot of scope for taking different approaches and just different methods of using it, and I always find it's a very simple way to explain games to people who haven't played a particular game involving a Rondel before. So I really like this one. It just offers a lot of different approaches that you can be taken. So let's get started at number 10. So at number 10 I have a game that actually has two Rondels. This one is Crown of Amara. Now, Crown of Amara is a game I often recommend as an almost introductory or a way to dip your toe into the Euro kind of style of games that I tend to enjoy. This one, you have basically one wheel which correlates to collecting resources, and the other one where you're going to be cashing in those resources to get points in different ways. But the way you actually move your worker or your player piece around each of these rondels is interesting in itself. We have this player board with 3 different slots in, and you're going to have a personal kind of deck of cards, and you're going to basically allocate one of these cards onto these different spots, which will determine whether you move one space, 2 spaces, or 3 spaces around the rondel. And those cards also have an additional action on as well, which can kind of synergize and create combos with the actions from the rondel themselves. A really interesting idea, and I can't think of any other games or many other games that use 2 rondels, particularly in this method. But I thought it was a really novel approach, and I did enjoy this one quite a lot. As I said, probably more catered towards the more introductory gateway level Euro game, but that doesn't take away from how well the rondels work together with this one. Particularly likes the way that you can mix them as well, so you don't always have to have a kind of an action board and a resource board. You can actually choose to plug them into each other because the boards are modular to really up the complexity and the brain burner kind of nature of these games. Really good, really fun, and a nice kind of incentive to get to spaces faster than other players as well, which did shine through really well. So yeah, a bit of a game that hasn't got immense popularity, probably not as popular or half as popular as I thought it would be, but definitely one checking out if this one appeals to you. That is Crown of Amara at number 10. At number 9, I have Great Western Trail. Now, this is an immensely popular, pretty involved Euro-style game, as you are essentially starting in one place in America and you're travelling along this rondel, or down this rondel, basically collecting cattle, selling cattle, before you get to Kansas, where you are going to cash in these cattle to get money. And the pacing of this game is quite interesting because you're going to start off with some basic buildings on the board, and you're going to go travelling along spots, stopping at these different buildings, maybe selling cattle, buying new ones, moving your train along the top where it lets you deliver in more popular cities or more lucrative cities. But as the game goes on, you're deploying more building onto the board, creating more opportunities to stop along the way. A really nice game that has quite a lot going on, which I can't really go into too much detail with, but that rondel aspect does shine through, and I do like the way that it ramps up as the game develops. More options become apparent. You can force people to stop at your buildings and suffer a bit of a penalty. There are different routes to take as well, where you can kind of unblock these hazards and stuff. Really good game, really involved, and if you like the heavier end of your Euro games without being too complex and too convoluted, then Great Western Trail is a great option. Immensely popular, and rightly so, because it is a very strong game. That is Great Western Trail at number 9. At number 8, I have a game from last year with the Red Cathedral. Now, the Red Cathedral is very similar to a lot of games from kind of face value, where you are just travelling around collecting resources to try and build the cathedral to get points. But the way you collect these resources is built on this rondel. And there's basically 4 different sections of this rondel. Even more than that. And they have dice allocated to certain spots. And all you're going to do on your turn is you're going to pick one of these dice, and you're going to move them the amount of pips that are face up. And then you're going to take the resource or the action associated to where that's finalised, or where you've ended up. And the cool thing about this is you can compound your your actions, because if there's already a dice there where you've ended up, you take double the bonus, or if there's another 2 dice there, you take 3 times the bonus. So there's this real ramping up effect, and you can time things just right to get quite a lot of resources. But at the same time, you have a capacity of resources that you can keep on your player board, so you have to bear that in mind as well. And the idea is you're going to use these resources to contribute to building the cathedral, which will get you victory points. It will give you the opportunity to buy new kind of engine building upgrades. So whenever you use a certain colour dice, then you get further follow-up bonuses. There's an area control element to decide who's built the most or contributed to the most of the cathedral at the end. A wonderful little game, again, probably around the hour mark to play this one. And it's a lot of game in a small box, because the box is only probably about this big for this game. And a really nice one, and particularly the thing I took away from this game is that resource rondel. That dice wheel is absolutely fantastic and a great innovative mechanism that I would highly recommend checking out. That is the Red Cathedral at number 8. At number 7, I have Heaven and Ale. Now, Heaven and Ale is a real interesting game that's quite hard to wrap your head around and understand how to play well when you initially approach this one. And in fact, I'm still learning it. This is where you have a player piece and you're traditionally moving along this board, deciding where to stop off. You can go as far as you want, but you can never go back on yourself. And you're collecting kind of crops and things to build onto your player board. But when you collect these, not only do you have to pay for them, you have to decide where you want to place them on your kind of farmland. So you've got like half of the board which is in the sunlight and half of the board which is in the shadow or the shade. And if you build them in the sunlight, then they're going to be worth potentially victory points. But if you build them in the shade, they're going to be worth coins. So you have to balance this income of when you trigger these scoring points, which is another space on the rondel, to not only keep your cash flow going, but making sure that you get points as well. This is one of the strongest examples of that incentive goading, where you want to go as far as you can, but to do so, you're going to have to sacrifice a lot on the way, which can leave opportunities for other players to mop up behind you and get lots of bonuses rather than the particular ones that they want. A really nice game. I think it's fundamentally sound. The scoring mechanism is quite interesting and a bit twisted, where you have to work on all your different crop types to build them up this track, and the kind of anyone's lagging behind can really drag you down. So you have to take a quite a well-rounded and balanced approach, knowing when you have to trigger these scorings. And the pacing of this game leaves you kind of backed into a corner, because you can't wait too long, and you have to make sure you do things in the best order, or the most efficient points gathering order. Wonderful little game, and so well executed. That is Heaven and Ale. At number 6, I have Merlin. Now, Merlin is one of Stefan Feld's probably less acclaimed games. I think the people who do like it tend to really like it. This game is a roll and move rondel game. So essentially you have this big rondel made up of all these different actions on them. And you are given a number of dice at the beginning of the turn. You're rolling them, and then you're choosing which order to use these dice to move your kind of knight piece around the board, to determine which order you're going to take these actions. And you're going to use these actions just to kind of gather shields to kind of fight off these invaders. You are trying to control the different castles to get area majorities. You're trying to control the separate environs board to get bonuses there as well. Has some great synergies and combos in this game. Yes, there's a bit more luck dependent than your average Feld game, but the more you play this one, I think the more you appreciate the mitigation tools available to you if you look for them. Not only are you trying to do that, you're trying to fulfill these objective cards as well. And if you want to really up the ante in terms of a rondel, you must get the Arthur expansion for this game, which adds a separate rondel into the centre of the board, which is another communal control piece. So all the players are controlling this piece that can go clockwise or anti-clockwise, which can give you more options. I love this game. I think it's really charming. I think there's a lot of things to explore, a lot of things to try, but still being quite tactical, and it's just almost mapping out that rondel and how you're going to navigate it, which shines through for me. And a fantastic little rondel game. That is Merlin. At number 5, I have my second Alexander Pfister game. This one is Maracaibo. Now, Maracaibo does have some similarities to Great Western Trail, but I think the rondel shines through a bit stronger for me in this one. In fact, this is one of my favourite games of all time. So this one takes place in the Caribbean islands, and you are traversing your ship around these islands, moving, I think, pretty much as many spaces as you want. I think it's up to 7. But the more spaces you travel, the fewer actions you get. But you are given incentives to try and finish the rondel quicker than your opponent, because that can potentially block their actions, and they've only got a certain amount of opportunities before the boards reset again. But as you go around this rondel, you're going to be kind of fulfilling contracts and trying to complete quests by cashing in these cards. You're building up a bit of an engine by buying these cards and investing in things to make things cheaper. You're traveling along the kind of forestry and collecting bonuses along the way. And you can even choose to deploy your kind of associates or friends along these different islands along the way, which gives you more options when you visit those particular islands on the rondel. Another game a bit like Great Western Trail, where there's so much to explain in a 2-minute snippet. But I love the way the rondel works in this game. You are really building it to your own needs, and just deciding whether you want to go slower and take more actions, or go faster and potentially stop your opponent from doing things. It's just a wonderful game, a real kind of everything but the kitchen sink style game. It has a lot going on, but all based around that core rondel mechanism, which just works beautifully. One of my favourite games, as I said, Maracaibo. At number 4, I have Glenmore 2 Chronicles. Now, this is a re-implementation of Glenmore, which was a game that goes back quite a few years now. This is a tile placement game, but the way you gather your tiles in the first place is based on this rondel, where you have this separate board with all the different tiles allocated to the different spots. And the idea is you can travel as far as you want, again, but not back on yourself, to get the particular tiles you want. But you do not take another turn until everyone else has caught up with you or surpassed you. So sometimes you might want to jump really far ahead to get precisely what you want, but you have to sit back and just watch everyone else mop everything else up. And I love that mechanism. I think it's a real kind of visceral feeling, and adds a lot of weight into decisions. But not only on top of the rondel, which is great, you've got a wonderful tile placement game where you are trying to lay tiles to trigger all the tiles around it. It has a bit more of a spatial puzzle than your average tile placement game, because you have to be very careful about where your actual kind of player pieces are on your map, because you can only build in certain spots. The scoring in this game is interesting because you're always scored in relation to what the other players are doing, rather than just a surface value of points. So yeah, another wonderful kind of, maybe on the heavier end of a medium weight game, but that rondel mechanism just is great. And not only are you fighting for the tiles, you're also fighting for these different set collection bonuses, and you're collecting for these kind of power investments as well. Lots of things to try here, and all based around the rondel. Wonderful game. This is Glenmore 2 Chronicles. So let's get into the top 3. So at number 3, I have Teotihuacan. Now, Teotihuacan is a brilliant game, slightly intimidating game when you first look at it, but fundamentally it is a big rondel with these different action spots allocated around the board, and they are modular, so you can vary it up from game to game. And not only are you given 1 player piece in this game, you're actually given 3. And they're not just your average player piece, a pawn, it is actually a dice or die. So you are essentially moving one of your die 1, 2 or 3 spaces to either collect resources. You are choosing to contribute to the Great Temple in the middle of the board, or the Great Pyramid, which is like almost like a mahjong style game where you're trying to match up these symbols. You are investing in different technology to make you better at things. And not only that, the actual spots on the rondel are divided into 2, where you can choose to lock in your dice and get really powerful abilities, or you can just take the ability from the kind of main action area. But you also have to bear in mind who's there before you, because whoever's there before you, you have to pay an additional fee. And on top of that, you are rewarded for kind of compounding your dice together, because if you ever line up, more than the 1 dice by taking 1 action, you get increased rewards. So not only are you trying to spread yourself thinner to give yourself more options, keeping your dice together is great because you get stronger abilities. And I think this game is one of the best, certainly one of the best examples of scoring those combos. You might want to do one thing that lets you get a resource, and if you've got the technology, you get another resource, and then you get another ability that lets you climb a track, and when you climb a track, you get this resource and get something for your set collection bonuses. Wonderful game, so much things to explore, loads of scoring options, but that Rondel is where it is at. What a great game this is. One of the best games I've ever played. This is Teotihuacan, City of Gods. At number 2, I have Navigador by Mac Gertz. Now, this game is probably the quintessential Rondel. No bells or whistles. This is simply an action wheel on the player board, which you're going to use either by moving 1, 2, or 3 spaces, potentially more than that if you choose to pay an additional fee to take the corresponding action. And the actions are pretty simple in this one. You're either moving your ships to explore the world, potentially losing ships along the way if it's going into new territory. You are buying and selling resources. You are setting up plantations, and a real throwback Euro game that still feels innovative and fresh. And as I kind of said at the beginning of the video, I think Navigador is one of the strongest examples of how streamlined a pretty involved game can be by using a Rondel. Because you're only limited to those to these 3 actions, that it really does help you focus and streamline your thoughts to, while there's a lot going on, those are your 3 options at any time. And I think Navigador just does a great job of implementing that. A game that you can score points in different ways and strategies by, investing in setting up these in these plantations, by building factories, by exploring new land, and you can invest in the kind of strategy you've gone down. One of those games where you want to stop along every spot on the Rondel, but doing so just won't be efficient as you think it would be, as other players be more selective. A brilliant game, again, another one of my favourite games of all time, Navigador. Check this one out, very much an underappreciated game, and I think it somewhat sits in the shadow of Concordia, which is by the same designer, and people seem to go towards that one, but Navigador is equally as good, and that Rondel is a big reason for that. And at number 1, I have my second Steffenfeld game with Trajan. Now, Trajan, the Rondel, is everything that this game is built around. It very much is your user interface for the game. The board itself is isolated from the Rondel. It's pretty much a series of mini games where you can get points for doing lots of different things. But to get those actions in the first place, you need to navigate the Rondel. And this one uses the Mancala system, where you have a bunch of tokens on the board, or on your Rondel, and you are collecting a set of these tokens and you're dropping them off one at a time, and the bowl in which you end up in is not only going to give you the action that you are going to take, but if you line up the certain colours, because all these different tokens are different colours, you can potentially get another bonus as well, such as getting a bunch of victory points or taking a bonus action. What a wonderful game this is. This is one of those games that really does blow my mind. I think it is just a genius design. And a big part of that is the strategic and precise decision making you can do by really concentrating on that Rondel. Yes, it's a game you can sit back and just try and wing it and just just go with the flow. But if you do want to take that step further and map your turns, far in advance, you can do so because all the information is there. You always want to make sure you're investing in getting these additional actions onto your Rondel in the first place so that you can get those additional triggers. But not only is the Rondel fantastic, the actual game itself is great. A real feast for the senses. Lots of different points you can go for. A real point salad style game. Pretty dry in terms of its theme and things. Set in Roman times, as you are kind of going on a bit of a conquest to explore new lands. You are trying to fill the needs of the people by filling certain objectives to not suffer negative points. But wow, that Mancala Rondel wheel is just out of this world good. And I think, again, you have to invest the time in. It's not the most complex a game, it's pretty involved, but the depth and the satisfaction you get by navigating that Rondel well is just unmatched. Just an amazing game, and in my top 3 games ever. So highly recommend this one. It's just a masterpiece of a design. So I hope that this has been a useful video to you. If a Rondel is something you've wanted to dip your toe into, then these are the best of the best. A fantastic mechanism. I'm always looking forward to new Rondel games because while they're all Rondel games, they all do take a slightly different approach on that simple mechanism, and I love that. So if you have enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.